Hey tribe, how are you? So today I wanted to touch briefly on a way to just sort of observe from this sort of detached but also a very loving perspective. So this is really about us taking time in nature, some downtime. You guys know that over the weekend I was able to unplug and really step away from my phone and just kind of put it away, and it's been incredibly refreshing, and I guess you could say clarifying, and as far as attuning us to our deeper sense of self and of course our more expansive sense of self. And this is really a continual unveiling or revealing these deeper aspects of how we can relate in a more loving way with ourselves and then of course with the world. And part of our practices here, you guys know this, is like, spending time just people watching and maybe observing our own judgments, our thoughts about the world. Certainly, personal love rituals, so step 4 is really important for that, as far as our ability to treat ourselves and enjoy life, like truly play with life, truly experience your own kind of innocent curiosity when it comes to this deeper revelation and understanding that you are the world that you see. So if you are the world that you see, you do want to be spending time like with the world that you perceive and being a friend to that world. So ideally we're going to put ourselves in a place or in an environment that is uplifting or it's inspirational to us. Certainly most of us resonate with going into nature, so going to beaches, being barefoot, being with nature, not just kind of taking photos of it, right? But like quietening down and relaxing and luxuriating in the natural elements, right? Like in because it's that sacredness, it's that sacred symbiotic connection that our own bodies have with the earth herself. And for us to deepen that connection, it's a deepening of our own connection, right? And then on top of that, it's a deepening of our sense of meaning and purpose here because we're relating to the earth that we're walking, right? And it's not this like separate feared thing, but an integral part of our ability to fully experience our aliveness, right? So this is really about our ability to observe the world from a place of friendliness and companionship, that we can look around us at the people here and at the world around us and not simply complain or not simply think, oh, everything's got to change, but just love it and love it for what it is, where it is here now. Be present with, yes, there's all these issues we've created, and yes, there's these epic changes, and yet still step 1 is like the gratitude piece. How are we still able to just be grateful for our own existence? How can we practice loving even people or things that might be difficult for us to love or might be challenging or might challenge a belief that we have or might challenge a kind of a program or imprint that our body has, and it feels really counterintuitive to move into that space, and yet this is what we're asking of ourselves, is to really break through those energetic barriers that we feel and experience as stress, tension, limitedness, quite literally like physical tightness in our bodies. Our hips are tight, our back is tight, or our back is sore. When we have those physical ailments, that we're addressing them from a place of love. Again, we're not living here in fear of our bodies. That's what we're inherently transforming, is the inner conflict that we're carrying from within ourselves. Because if we didn't have or weren't vibrating that distortion or inner conflict, we wouldn't have any conflict outside of us. So the challenges that we're facing are assisting us in harmonizing or healing that conflict from within ourselves. And it is clear as day, it's obvious as anything, that as we deepen and heal that connection, our world begins to reflect that, in as far as better feelings, more energy, but also peaceful groundedness in the downturns, and ease in the fluidity with which we kind of drop into relaxation state and move into inspired action state. And simply our experiences. We're not called to certain places, people, places, things, because we're not vibrating it anymore. And then, 2 weeks go by, months go past, or years, and then we can really start to see momentum building, and we can start to see how we're integrating the aspects of ourselves. And I'm definitely getting a piece that I'll share with you as the thought develops a little bit more. But it's regarding our energy system, and basically often how we work up the emotional ladder, and the fact that in truth there's a lot of us, we go descending into the bodies and then try to adapt here, and then we get imprinted. And so the imprinting is about healing the lower chakras in such a way that we can then open the heart, heal the heart in an integral way that is embodied. And then once the heart heals, it's like the system goes through another upgrade, and it kind of keeps moving up, but it transitions through each chakra point to be embodied, to access creative sexual energy, to be empowered, to be in our heart, to be awakened, and then to access higher consciousness and to channel that through our expression field, whether it's vocally through our mouth or, writing, art, dancing. You guys know, we all have our unique way of expressing ourselves creatively, and then we channel that. And then once we find that means of channeled expression, then that in and of itself becomes it has to become refined, it has to become more subtle. So that bridges into the greater subtlety as well. And that's where we almost do a recycling through, where we see the residue, or we go over our default settings from a different perspective. And then what I'm observing is that we go through the chakra systems again, but we amplify them on a new level. And so we're working with them from, maybe you could say, a higher perspective, or just a slightly different perspective, which allows us to work with our energy in a more masterful way, in a way that we really are seeing the connection between our own self and integrity and our manifestations, and in an integral way, again, in an embodied way, really just owning the creatorship status, and yoking it, so that we can just continually heighten. And this is something that dropped in earlier today, was that the labels, and they all have its place for us understanding ourselves and our spectrums, right? At the same time, there's a paradox there in being able to drop the label, so that we don't limit ourselves by any boxes or mental boxes that we're establishing. And then finally, to offer that terms like empath or empathy, and this is again off of talking to Francis, but you know, the rise of empathy, you could say, is as understanding what empathy is across the human collective. This is still relatively new in a mainstream way. And personally, guys, how I see the rise of this in our kind of mainstream collective story is that it's really ushering in like the broader acceptance of our psychic, intuitive, extrasensory, clairvoyance, audiovoyance. So it's helping lift the lid on that which has been denied, right? The witch hunts were basically what are at a time in our history where we literally fucking persecuted that energy, right? So we still, some of us might be carrying the memory backlog of that time, but we're not living in that time anymore. Hence that we can just sort of break through that fear and start to express, start to tune in. And it's practice, like any form of anything. Like we practice tuning into that invisible energy, but knowing that that is the invisible energy that links us to the infinite broader intelligence of the universe which we inhabit, right? So in truth, for us to be more advanced, intelligent, loving beings, we do want to be more merged with our infinite self and embrace in totality our expression, right? So that's loving our bodies, loving our form, loving our communities, loving being in form, loving the experience of separation through unity, right? Perspective, through that kind of unified source connection is what kind of unifies the totality of experience perceived through the lens of separation. So it's like just like throwing it all out and then having all the right components and then putting it back together, but making something even better, making something that we didn't think of 2000 years ago because we didn't have the technology, or we hadn't yet evolved to that level of awareness, and now we're evolving to that level of awareness very, very quickly. And so we want our minds to be open and agile. We want our bodies to feel light and kind of sprightly, so that we can be making leaps in different directions, at the same time have the awareness and the mindfulness to just hold space for more and more and more, so we can continue the conversation from a detached and loving perspective, and can continue to share of ourselves even when it feels scary, right? Even when it feels kind of frightening to be exposing certain truths, or allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, like whatever it might be. All of that stuff is on a certain level kind of frightening. At the same time, what we're learning collectively is that we want to be working through those fears, and that the truth, the glorious, glorious truth is that there is such reward and, divine compensation on the other side of breaking through those fears. And it can be quite incremental, it can be quite gentle in its pace. It can take maybe lifetimes, right? But the bounty and the beauty really is within that yoking ability. And then when we start to see the manifestation of our desired effect, knowing that we're doing the yoking, that's conscious creation, right? And that really does bridge us as a human collective, as these storytellers, as these creators. That really bridges us into, oh wow, right? Like, we've been creating on this level, and great, applause, so wonderful, so many good things. And now we can really look to this next level of creation. It's like sci-fi movies almost. It's like, yeah, it's like sci-fi kind of fairy tale, but very within our grasp. It's just a matter of enough human minds to bridge into that frequency, and then practice embodiment and manifestation at that level consciously, right? So that we can lead by example, and share and shine. And beings have done it in the past. It's just not part of the mainstream story, right? So this is all stuff that is percolating under the surface of our mass consciousness, and it's just a matter of kind of the snowball effect, or that tipping point effect of more awareness, juicy love flow nuggets being exposed to the mainstream, and being exposed to the masses. And it's leaking, it's like you're seeing through the cracks of the system. We're seeing through the cracks of the old ways, and all of those little cracks are just assisting people in claiming their power, or reclaiming their power as beings, and then choosing something better for themselves. And that's all it really is, you guys, is just individuals choosing something more enlightened and better for themselves. And then that literally just has a knock-on effect in their communities, and then their communities, and then their communities, and that person might inspire one other person, and then that person, da, 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 da. So it's slow. Sometimes it's invisible. Sometimes we default back and we think that nothing is changing ever at all. And then hooray, we have these moments where we got to remind ourselves to give ourselves a pat on the back, and know that all this emotional work is not necessarily for everybody. None of us are better or worse or any of that, but life can be tough, but it really is in our emotional field, in that connectivity, and in that awareness of being with the energy that you are. And I think you all get that and are amazing at it. So I hope that was useful to all of you. I hope you're having a gorgeous day. As always, feel free to reach out, book a session, and I'll speak to you guys real soon. Love you loads. Have a great day. Bye, Trav.